Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're back in War Thunder looking at another anniversary that is being celebrated for Gaijin, and this is for the M51W and Merkava, basically the anniversary of them going into combat. On the 5th of June 1967, the Six-Day War began, where Israeli M51 Sherman tanks were used for the first time in combat, and 15 years later, on the 6th of June 1982, the Lebanon War started, where Merkava tanks were used for the first time, proving themselves against Syrian T-72s. So because of this, Gaijin is bringing both of them back. The M51 and the Merkava Mark II will be available for Golden Eagles and are back for good, so they're not going anywhere, which is quite nice. And also, at the same time, they will be 30% off until the 9th of June. So you basically have 5 days to get them at a discount, which is quite nice, and we'll do some little mini reviews in this kind of video just to look at them. And then also, just to remind you, remember, there's still these specials which are on offer for the Canadian side of things, the Moments of Valor, if you want to get the FA-18 for cheap, or if you want to get the Leopard 2A4M pack for cheap, I'll leave some links in the description to those. You have the pre-order for the Northrop NF5A that turned up. You also have the pre-order for the Comanche, which we will be doing some additional testing on the dev server with once it is actually fully there and integrated. And also in this video, we will talk about how I'm going to approach the new event, which is starting tomorrow, the Normandy 44 event. So as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and also like the video. Let's get started. So let's have a look at the two vehicles that are on offer. The first one is the M51W. Basically what this one is exactly the same as the standard M51. The only difference is this standard one has a 30 cal on the top, whereas the M51W has a 50 cal. So technically this one is pay to win because of the fact that it gets the 50 cal over the 30, which does help against tracks, does help against planes, and actually is kind of useful. But, you know, it's a very, very small improvement over the standard M51. You'll find it at rank 4, so it's able to research basically rank 5 and rank 4. But generally, I would say you have enough lineups nowadays at these BRs that you don't really want to get it for that reason. The reason to pick up something like this is for crew skills. One of the issues, especially with a tech tree that starts at rank 4, is you're basically starting at the mid BRs of the game and don't have access to any crew skills. So any more research that you can get with these vehicles to try and improve your crew skills will help massively because obviously crew skills have a huge, improvement in what goes on. Even with the crew skills that I have, without like the expert and ace and also not fully 150, you can see the difference in reload and turret rotation speed and also other factors like the elevation speed, which is absolutely terrible on this thing, by the way. And the gun is also insanely bouncy, which is why it's very, very important to get some crew skills going on something like this. So therefore you can, help out with your standard vehicles and make them a little bit easier to play. So it's just a way of getting into the tech tree and not having to worry too much about, basically just getting annihilated over and over again. Playing the stock M51 by itself was an awful experience just because of, once again, the gun laying and also at the same time just not having a lineup at all. Nowadays, you have the M109 at least, and also you could bring in the Rochev afterwards, but this gives you a solid vehicle to bring in with the standard M51. The other vehicle that's on offer is the Merkava Mark II-D. Now, this one, they had to keep putting up in BR because it was too overpowered. And then what they did is they gave it a new round, and then they had to put it up in BR again. So basically, this vehicle has just been a march upwards. It used to be around 9.0 or 9.3. Nowadays, it's around 10.0. And it's definitely not as good as it used to be because of how many buffs have come to vehicles around it. But it is still a completely serviceable, good vehicle. With the buffs that they gave it, while also up-tiering it, generally, make it pretty decent. The only problem nowadays is the fact that you don't really have a lineup to run it with unless you want to bring in like a bunch of like lower stuff. You can bring in the Sabra if you have a Death Wish, but also you have stuff like the Chaparral. You also have the other Merkavas, which you can run as backups for it. So at least there's that, but generally you want to run stuff at the same BR. And so the Mark II-D, it has some pretty nice armor on it because it has this internal armor that you can see here, and then also some pretty decent armor on the top of it. It also has a bunch of weird angles, meaning that when people shoot APFSDS at you, it can ricochet in just like really weird ways, which has always been a big strength of the Merkava. The higher the Merkavas go, the armor, the worse it gets, because even though you have like all of these armored sheets in the middle of it, you get to a point where people have rounds which will just penetrate through this stuff. And I feel like since this Merkava Mark II-D has gone up in BR so many times, it's probably at that state where it goes against mega rounds when it gets into like 10-3, 10-7 matches. They did improve the transmission of the thing though, so it can actually reverse really well too. And as I said, they gave it a better round to the M413. It also has the LWS, which is super nice, especially since this thing has an insane amount of smokes. So survivability is still through the roof, even though you're facing like better rounds right now. It's still really, really nice. So the vehicle's great. Like I really enjoy the Merkavas. I'm like a huge fan of them just because of the survivability with the smoke grenades and the LWS, and also the armor half the time doing something, but you can't rely on it anymore, which kind of sucks. The gun is the standard reload for a 105, and also, you know, you get some pretty good penetrating rounds, and you get the 50 cal on top, which, as we talked about with the M51, is actually a pretty big deal. So with the Normandy 44 event starting tomorrow, I thought we would do a video talking about kind of the tips and tricks that I'm going to go into with getting and grinding the T86. The fact that we've had events back-to-back recently has been pretty rough, but at least they're in different game modes, so therefore you can kind of just like grind through them. For me, I'm going to go for the coupon on the T86, depending on how like the dev server stuff goes and other things, because obviously other stuff gets in the way, but at bare minimum, we're aiming for the 35k every 2 days. Now, obviously, the higher BR the vehicles you play, the more chance you have at getting the higher multipliers, therefore the more score that you can get. But there is definitely more of a balancing ground, especially in realistic, compared to something like a realistic or naval. So in ground, you obviously have the fact that a lot of people just don't spawn after the first or second spawns at higher BRs. So you can actually get more scores in the mid tiers than you can at the high tiers, just because there's just more action going on. And also generally you have a few more overpowered pieces of CAS, apart from top tier, of course. But what I'm talking about is kind of like the general BRs between like 9.0 and 11.0. But in the mid tiers around like 6.0, the World War II areas, you have some insane vehicles for CAS, meaning that if you can do well in your first ground vehicle, switch to the CAS vehicle, you can do pretty insane things, which can work really, really well. The other thing is you can use this event to kind of prepare for the new update. So obviously there's some new vehicles coming in for ground, the AAs, which are turning up for everybody, the T72 for the USSR, and then also a few other vehicles that are coming in, like the Leopard 1A2. So maybe what you could do is you could have a look at those vehicles, see which ones that you're interested in, and you could kind of research the tech tree towards that vehicle. So therefore, when the update drops, which will be after this event, not straight after, usually it's around about like mid-June, then you're already on the way to kind of getting that vehicle sorted. You could also prep your vehicles. This is something that a lot of people do when it comes to research. You know how you get like a bonus amount of research every time you do like a row or a column of modifications? I can't remember which one it is, but you know how you have like those tiers of modifications. So if you actually research it where it's like only like 1,000 off, or maybe like 2,000 off that tier, so let's see your tier 2 modifications, when the new vehicle comes in, you can then fully research that tier, and you will actually get the bonus for that vehicle. So for example, on my Leopard 2A6, if I did that for each of the tiers of the modification, I could get, what is that, like nearly 50,000 RP worth of bonus straight off the bat, for that vehicle, and I'd have to put in a lot less effort, at least before or after the update comes out, instead of, you know, during it. So I think that's actually really cool, and it's definitely something you could do. There is a bit of an issue again again with this update and this event, because the battle pass missions just do not match up with it, apart from, I suppose, maybe the help of repairing one, but that's really not as easy to do in ground as it is in something like naval, so that kind of sucks. And the other part of it that I would say is, of course, you have the pages of history. So you have like the D-Day event, for example. Then after that, you have the Vyborg Petrovodsk offensive, which is also something that you can do in like rank 3s. So you could use both of those to do the new event, which would be really nice. Another thing to also kind of focus on is just kind of getting X amount done per day. As I've said many times, you shouldn't look at the challenges. I know that sounds really weird. Stick them in your favorited achievements and just leave them there. Don't worry about them. Don't care about them. And then after, I don't know, maybe an hour or two of playing, go check them and see where you're at. And then you can kind of make plans from there, whether you want to change stuff up or whether you want to, you know, move stuff around. Because obviously, you know, you don't want to put extra pressure on yourself every time you see that little line move. It's much better to kind of hide it and then go from there. So the other thing is also meta lineup. So for me, I'm probably going to be playing a decent amount of 6-0 America, just because I feel like playing the Hellcats. Like they're super mobile and fun, and also at the same time they're vehicles which also are going to be good alongside the one that's coming in. For the Soviets, I might also be playing a few higher BR stuff. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Like 12-0 is calling to me at the moment while waiting for those kind of vehicles to come in. And then also for Britain, I want to get kind of the Rapier research, which I think would be pretty fun. The issue that I have right now is a lot of the nations that I have sorted, I'm kind of stuck in like certain areas where I have a lot of vehicles researched, but not many of them spaded. So I have to kind of go over the hill, get them all done, and then move from there. For example, something like the Italian tech tree, I want to do the Leopard 2A4 and the Freccia, but both of them are stock, and therefore they're a little bit harder to get into as we go along. A Leclerc spade might also happen. That one could be pretty fun too. Another little thing to mention is we are also going to be live streaming during the event. We're also going to be live streaming the Summer Games Fest stuff this weekend to check out the new games which are going on. So make sure to come along so we can, well, just see some new titles and see what's happening. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecovo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Warthunder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.